GeogAtoZ supporting the National Festival of Fieldwork from the Geographical Association. Today's Q for questions, that really important skill of inquiring about the landscapes in your locality when you're doing fieldwork. And it may lead to outcomes like this, or it may lead to other sorts of outcomes which we'll come to today. So asking questions to try and interrogate where we're going with the children. And I'm going back 36 years to Primary Geographer, now Primary Geography Journal. And the president at the time was somebody called Michael Storm. And he came up with some inquiry questions, some key questions that we need to ask about any location or place that we're studying. So imagine your local field trip, imagine where you're going to go with the children. The first question to ask is, so what is it like? And many of these other videos have covered the importance of place knowledge, including the previous video to this one. Why is it like it is? What makes it like that? What people, what activities, what way that the landscape is laid out and has been created and curated over time has caused that location and place to be as it is? How does it change at night time? And all the other things that I've talked about in previous videos as well. Connections, how is this place connected to? In terms of transport, in terms of people, in terms of building design. Again, many of these things are echoing through previous videos in this. Is it Greco-Roman architecture? Is it stone from the local hills? How is this connected to other locations? Is it just glass and steel? Where's that glass and steel come from? You may not be able to know the answers to those things, but again, looking at the bollards, looking at the street furniture, there may be connections that you can make to other places separate to this. Even if this is to energy, where is the energy coming from to light these lamps? You may not know the answers to those things, but at least getting the children thinking about those connections. This street is dependent on other people and other locations is really quite important. How is the location and place changing? Again, in terms of time, in terms of space, how does it change at different times of the year, the seasons and things like that? So the change idea is really key in geography. And then finally, if you were to live here, if you were to study there, if you were to come every day, how would it be at different times? So that affective domain perspective is really important. Now, these have been updated over the years as well. Marcia Foley has updated these and got us to think particularly about the locational knowledge in terms of the Ordnance Survey grid references, or maybe the what three words grid reference, kind of trying to think about that. But these are really good to hold true to in terms of our development of questions. Now we're going to go through the 4 different locations in the UK that are covered at Key Stage 1. So you may know where this is, you probably don't, but this is from a hotel I stayed in once in Bute, the Isle of Bute. So this is off the coast of Scotland, and this is the view that we had towards the coastline there, towards the harbour, looking over that public house in the streetscape that you can see, those very well cared for and curated trees just down the road from a little public park, and clearly where the buses drop people off ready to get on the ferry to take you back to the mainland or to other islands as well off the west coast of Scotland. So you can tell I've been there, you can tell I can interrogate into that, and there's many more things we could say there about post boxes and post offices and bin collections and traffic flow and time of the day and all sorts of things we could dwell on in terms of the questions there. What would it look like if we were looking in the other direction? What would it look like if we were standing from a hill? One particular thing I'd want to ask children about is, do you think I'd ever see a hedgehog somewhere like that? And of course, that was one of the most wonderful things about that particular holiday, just going on a back road near there and just coming across a hedgehog just scuttling along the road. So it's that sense of place knowledge that I've talked about before, but also interrogating a picture like that, asking questions, posing questions about that you might want to do yourself in terms of questions, photographs that you've taken, but also about other locations that you are studying. Let's go to Wales. Let's again go to a coastal area, to a sand dune. Swansea, this is in this case, a very different sort of view here. Very similar sort of season during the summer, a kind of identifiable sculpture, if you like, of a surfboard there, and some modern flats on a very modern promenade, keeping us away from those precious sand dunes. So again, there's place knowledge there, Do they think it's in the UK? I mean, that would be a really good question about that particular image. It does look like it could be somewhere maybe on the south coast of Spain or many other places around Europe. That blue sky is not synonymous with the country of Wales, is it? Or even the UK. So again, we're trying to think about what's in that direction, what's in other directions. We're trying to develop that idea of why are there no people there? What's going on there? Is it not busy because there's no cars, because there's no road? Who is that promenade for? Um, who might live there? Could we live there? Could anybody live there? Are those homes for ordinary people just like me and you? What do you think's in that big tower block further down, the other residential apartment as it is towards the centre of Swansea? Do you think all of Swansea looks like this? What is that south coast of Wales like? This is not an image that many of you would pick in terms of the south coast of Wales. So all those questions are popping into my head as I look at this largely unplanned, but you would have questions as well, I would hope, about very many aspects of that, particularly about the sand dunes, which the physical geography is apparent as well that we could teach them and talk to them about as well. Let's go to Northern Ireland. Let's go to Belfast. And what I'm going to show over the next few slides is the power of artificial intelligence, ChatGPT in particular, that I've used to try and remind me of what some of these images were. This particular one is not so recent. This was taken a quarter of a century ago, so I had to check that this building is still there, and it's a kind of it's an insurance building, a very proud building that looks out onto the Belfast City Hall. So it's still there. It's got Starbucks now in the basement and various other changes of shop fronts if you go on the street view today. But essentially, that image is still as it was. That building is still impressive. And I wanted the AI to tell me a little bit more about the building. And the AI helped me. It told me about some of the things that I could point out to the children that I don't have off the top of my head. And you can see some of those there. Some of those might be appropriate for older children. But the power of this was I could just drag and drop this photograph of mine into ChatGPT and it could give me this information. So this gave me some ideas. Because this image, an England image, we've gone around the UK now. This is the fourth image of four. I just can't remember, and still I'm not 100% sure, so I'd happily be pointed out if I'm wrong, where this is. Now, the AI is telling me that it's highly characteristic, again, that word character, of Rye. And I think that's unlikely, actually, because of where I think I took it. It was in the south of England. The other AI that I tested thought it was in Worthing, which again is possible, possibly more possible, but again, I'm not 100% sure. But actually, for the purposes of this activity that you could do with children, we could call ourselves geographical detectives. And I could genuinely say, let's talk about the features of this rather than the specific location. It's really important for us to have locations, but actually, we need to perhaps investigate it first before we put a pin in the map, because I know it's definitely in England. So you've got some key language and vocabulary there. For example, narrow cobbled streets, parked cars, historic buildings, ornate church, prominent rose window, and so on. I'm sure if I kept on digging, I could find out quite quickly where this is, but I didn't spend very long doing that because I think it's more the hunt and the journey we go on that's actually more interesting as well, to look at this picture that I clearly took for a reason because it was picturesque and certainly tells us something about how small towns and villages like this were once built when the car wasn't so dominant, because there's certainly no space there for cars really, with them just slammed into wherever space they can find. So the detectives bit comes in really with the fact that this looks like Rye according to the AI, but then we could say, well, is any of these descriptions of where else it is? Because I then asked the AI to say, well, are there other places it could be? And I know I've been to Lincoln, and I do know it is characteristic of Lincoln, but I don't think it is Lincoln because I've been there more recently than taking this picture. But there's some images there that could perhaps suggest it was Lincoln. It also suggested County Durham as having similar characteristics. So it's this idea again of place knowledge from the previous video, asking questions of these locations and saying, could it be there? Could it be County Durham? Because that also has some of these characteristics that you can see there on the screen. It could be Arundel. I've not investigated this. I know I've been to Arundel. May even be Arundel the more I think about it, but I still don't quite know. But again, there's some similar aesthetics there. I wouldn't use that word with children, but I'd use the word characteristics again. I don't believe I've been to Wells, but it could well be Wells according to this as well. So the idea of geographical geographical detectives is maybe it's a location that you know about. Maybe I could have used the Swansea photograph and put that into there and asked ChatGPT to come up with alternatives to where this could be. And then we could either do an investigation together, or I could frame the investigation and develop that investigation over time with children, giving them some of these short descriptions. I'd probably simplify them even more for children. These are just taken from the AI directly, but I could simplify them with some of the key vocabulary. Which is the one that's most likely? Can we do some hunting around? Can we do some dialogue, some dialogic thinking together to try and make a best guess? And of course, you need to know the answer, and I haven't done that for the purposes of this video. I could do that after this, but you need to know the answer to actually point out the right one. But it is the joy of the hunt, the joy of the journey to get there, to ask the range of questions, to come up with that rich vocabulary in terms of geography, to try and give a sense of place. Tomorrow is all about rivers. Do join me then.